Hello, my friends. You know, to me, it looks like that there is quite a bit of confusion out there in the world. And this is what I see. Um, Most people are relying on something that worked yesterday. They're relying on that for what they need or depend on or want to create today. And that's why a lot of the old methods are still being used to create a new world. And it can be very confusing. I had to let go of a lot of that too over the years. I kept using the old ways that I had learned. We can use marketing for one because I took a number of these marketing classes. And inside of me, it just did not resonate. I tried it, and then I tried it maybe a little differently. Then they talk about heart-centered or whatever. But it was all still packaged and presented in the old way from yesterday, because that is what we have been using and relying on for so long. And that's why it's automatic for us just to keep doing what we used to do. So I really understand, how challenging it is to be able to shift to a whole new way that most of us do not know what is yet. We don't know we can't just go and say, okay, we're going to do it this way unless you get a download, whether it's from the heart, from the field, whatever, where you get the steps, how it's going to be done from now on. So when people are out there protesting and fighting things, battling things, from my point of view, they're using the old methods by protesting, by battling, by fighting it. That is old. That is depending on yesterday and before, the methods that have been used until now. And so we're bringing the same energy from the old paradigm, and we're trying to create a new paradigm. And it doesn't work. It simply does not work. It may look like it works. Actually, I do notice that a lot of people are really out there trying to make a difference with a beautiful intention. Um, there is more heart in it for many, not all. There is also more a willingness to do it peacefully, like Gandhi. He was trying to bring in a new way, but people were not ready for that. He had a lot of followers. But even though you believe in something and trying to do it a different way, that doesn't mean that it is fully embodied and that your energy and your frequency is aligned with that new. But of course, that also has its course, and we can only do what we can do. We can only do our best. So of course we're going to bring in the old ways, trying to create a new way. It's unavoidable. And then as you go along with that, like I did, for instance, in the marketing little coaching area business, and I tried and I tried. And inside I was screaming, like, no. And then finally, I really deeply listened to the no. And I had to surrender to not knowing how it's going to look now. And then, of course, there was a phase where I thought, okay, I'm just surrendering and letting it all go. And then somehow I thought that things would just start unfolding like I wanted them to. But that didn't happen either. So I had to keep letting go and letting go. And that is what we're going through now. And we do not know what it's going to look like. The idea that we think how it's going to look is based on the past. It's based on how it looked yesterday. But as you can see in the world, so much is crumbling and falling apart, and it's going to keep going for a while. And we cannot and should not try and, what was that term they used a few years ago? Build back better. No, 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 no. We are not building back better, right? That means we are going to do the same and trying to make it look better. And that is what most people are trying to do. And it's understandable. I wanted to know I'm not having any judgment at all about it because I get what's happening. It's unavoidable. But when you start accepting or realizing that it can't be rebuilt, it can't because it's done, it's crumbled. We need a whole new way. And that way we only find by consciously not grasping back on the old, not trying to use the old methods that don't work anymore. There's of course many things that do work, like how you build a house. There's a hammer and a nail. That's very basic, but of course there are certain things. You want to grow food, you put the seeds in the ground. But that's not what I'm talking about. That is kind of more, very earthy, right? I'm talking about the ideas and the concepts and that most of the world has been built on. That structure is not physical. It's been a mental, greedy, lack of heart, selfish, dualistic way that the structure of the world has been built. And that is what is crumbling. So that's why, when you're protesting, for whoever is in the government here, there, or anywhere, because you want somebody else in, but most of them are still living in the past. They live based on the old ways that we have lived by that don't work anymore. I don't know if they ever worked, more or less, but they're not going to work anymore. And that's why we're going to see so many ways that are going to crumble, the banking system, the medical system, the schooling. And even though a lot of it, people are very upset with one person who is seemingly behind it all, I think it's so much bigger than that, and that most of the people who are playing these roles are just puppets for the collapse that needs to happen if we want to raise to a higher frequency. And it may sound harsh and, uncaring if the way I say it, but it really is not. It's actually a really deep love for Mother Earth, for um, for the vision, the longing that lives in our hearts. But even though we want to bring this forth, we don't want to let go of what we considered safe. Of course not. And that's why it's, I'm saying, being done for us in a way. It's kind of, we're being pushed and pushed until we let go. And it isn't until we let go that the new can really start flowing through us. So, yeah, if you're upset about what's going on in the world and you just wanted to go back to the way it was maybe 10 years ago, as opposed to 4 years ago, whatever, or 20 years ago, um, we're not going backwards. We're not building back, we are building forward. And the forward is a new energy, a new frequency. And I always talk about that the longing that you feel in the heart for something else to start showing up as our world experience. Yeah, it's not easy. I really, it's hard. For some people, it's super, super, super hard. And for some, it's less hard. But, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. There's all these catastrophes happening all over, and we don't know if it's going to happen in our area next. We just don't know because there's so many crazy things happening that have never happened before. So we are living in times where the only thing we can rely on is the present moment and our direct experience of our I am presence. That is something that's real and it's always here. It always has been here, but we have been focusing away from it. And now, as far as I can see, we are being asked to come back and focusing what is real, not what appears to be real, like I talked about, I think it was yesterday, but what we can directly experience this now moment. And that's what we can come back to and come back to. We do need to know that the old world as we have known it is gone. There's still structures. Yes, there's still a lot of structures. I don't know how many of them are going to go down. But the world we have known and relied on, that's not going to continue with us. What's going to continue with us is what has always been here. And now we are asked to follow that instead of trying to bring the past into the future. I don't recommend it because it can't sustain itself anymore. The energies that sustained the old structure, very, very low frequency energies, not based on love, not based on oneness, connection. No, and we do not want to bring that forward. So the more we can leave it behind in ourselves, of course, because it's all an internal process. So the more we can disengage from engaging in the world, engaging in duality, in greed, in blame, all that stuff, the more we can let that go, we naturally step into this present moment where you will experience I am. Your I am divine presence. That is the only thing that is always here. And this knows exactly how to move forward into a way of fulfillment that we don't really know yet, but that we long for. And that's why we do know it. We do know it. So let's keep focusing in and be willing to not know what it's going to look like, how it's going to move forward, but know and learn to trust this moment. Be willing to not know. Be willing to not know. And that's a process. That is a process. I have a whole chapter, I think, in my book called Imagine Being Kind to Yourself. Because not knowing is scary for most of us. That's why we want to grasp onto something we know and that worked in the past. It was like, well, at least this I want to hold on to. And then you're holding and then it starts crumbling. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Maybe I can hold on to this one. And that starts crumbling. This is all happening out of love, by the way, because love and oneness is coming through. And the frequencies are so high that all this old stuff from the past, it just cannot live there. It cannot be sustained or maintained there. So that's why there's something new that's giving birth to itself. And that is through you and I. The more we go there, the more we open up for it to give birth. and we're not separate from it. Yeah. Do you need help with this? I think we all do. Absolutely. This is a huge, huge shift. Huge shift. I even see it, as a Hakomi therapist or a self-love mentor. I just see that there are certain things that are being left behind now. When you come to a certain place, you let go of that whole maybe therapy world and you start moving into what we're talking about here. So that's also there. I mean, it's changing everywhere, and we need to learn to follow along with it and then learn to trust the language of the soul, your intuition, the flow of life inside. And then, you know what? Just do your best. That's all we can do. Just do our best.